Senate was supposed to be in recess this weekend, or this week. We're not. We're going back into session to try one more time to get disaster relief through. Those I know on the Appropriations Committee, we've spent weekends, midnight, late to midnight, trying to get the money. We've got the money set aside in the appropriations bill, something the Senate has passed with a bipartisan majority. The money is there, it's well within the budget. Senators, both parties came together to get it and to have it because it's necessary. FEMA runs out of money this week. We have the highway fund does not have the money necessary to repair our roads and bridges. People need to have some kind of closure, and snow will start, as we all know, here in Vermont in a few weeks. Marcel and I spent the weekend going around visiting some of the sites where our volunteers are working, and the stories are both heartbreaking and uplifting when you hear all the things people have done. But I keep getting asked the same question. Why the holdup in disaster aid for America? It's never happened before. And I tell them there are some in the other body, mostly the Tea Party people, who say we can't give the money unless we take it out of other things like, I guess, education, medical research, and so forth. I would point out that most of the people who are saying that voted for a blank check for Iraq. They voted for a blank check for Afghanistan. They voted for a blank check to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild Iraq and Afghanistan. Money that has been stolen, lost. We saw what happened with one of our installations where an Afghan guard walked in and murdered an American in the last few hours. We will give money there. We don't ask what it costs. We just put it on the deficit, let our children and grandchildren pay it. We'll do this to rebuild Iraq and Afghanistan. Frankly, I think it's time to start rebuilding America. Rebuild America, rebuild our roads, rebuild our bridges, rebuild our schools. But put these good people who are suffering so badly here in Vermont, put them back in their homes. Every time there's been a disaster in another part of the country, whether it's Florida, California, Iowa, Vermonters have responded. I've heard so many stories. I know Senator Sanders has, of Vermonters, road crews and firefighters and others who've gone to other states to help out. We need help now. We need help now. Let's come home, America, and take care of our problems here. And that's what Senator Sanders and I must say, you heard some of the speeches that Bernie has given to the senators. He's been so strong in this. And we're united in this. Peter Welch is united in this. We want to get the money. Bernie? And I'm supposed to give you... Who's picked? I'll give it to him.
You've said it all. I don't need it.
Stand close.
I want to thank Senator Leahy for the work he has done in general. He's been a leader in the Senate on this, and as a member of the Appropriations Committee, he's playing an especially important role. So thank you much for the work you're doing. This is a profound issue in a very, very deep sense. The last that I heard, this country is called the United States of America, UNITED. And what that means is that when there is a disaster in Louisiana, the people of Vermont said, we have got to do everything we can to help those people. And when there is a tornado in Joplin, Missouri, people of Vermont, people all over this country said, hundreds of people killed. Of course we have got to respond because we are a nation, and that is what a nation is about. Now, what the right-wing extremists in the House are saying is that for the first time in the modern history of America, that instead of putting emergency funding into helping Vermont rebuild its devastated communities, New Jersey, North Carolina, other states, for the first time in modern American history, we're now going to have a budget debate about where that money comes from. And I would remind you that this debate takes place at exactly the moment where the super committee in Congress is talking about $1.5 trillion in cuts. That debate is already going on. So instead of saying to Vermont, New Jersey, North Carolina, of course we're going to rebuild the devastated communities. Of course we're going to provide housing. Of course we're going to get the road construction underway, which will be too late if we don't get moving pretty soon in Vermont, impact us seriously. Of course we're going to do that. And we will continue the debate over how we move toward a balanced budget. But we're not going to do it on the backs of devastated communities. So what is happening now is wrong. It is unprecedented. And I speak for our whole delegation. I know Senator Leahy, Congressman Welch, and I are going to do everything that we can to get the necessary funds to rebuild our communities and do it in the way that makes America proud.
Actually, Marcel and I met with the president a week ago. And the very first question he raised, what's happening in Vermont? And I said, we've got to get it. He knows that he's talked to you, he's talked to me, he's talked to Governor Shumlin. We have the White House behind us. Now I'd like to get some of these people who want help when their states are hurt to pay attention to our state. I don't mean to get so worked up on this, but in all my years in the Senate, I've never seen such a disconnect between what we are supposed to do as a country and what we're doing.
And I would say it's not only that we have the White House behind us, I think we have the overwhelming majority of the American people behind us. The American people do not believe that you turn your backs on communities that have been devastated, slow down what has to be done, and engage in another budget debate. That's not what the American people believe. So this is, we have got to go forward as vigorously and as quickly as we possibly can.
Questions? I'm intrigued by one of the reporters who's taking notes, and I see music on the back, of the notes.
Oh, yes.
And I'm thinking, wow,
Nice.
it is Vermont. Go ahead.
Senator Leahy, I heard on NPR this morning that not just the FEMA funds, but the whole potential government shutdown and everything else that would be in this bill, the Republicans are using it as part of a strategy to basically, if we keep having these economic problems, keep not funding these bills, they're using it as a strategy where they can force Obama out of the White House in the fall. What do you make of that strategy? Could they use it to keep forcing FEMA funds from being funded?
The Republican leader of the Senate said his primary mission in life is to make President Obama fail. I have never heard such outrageous thing from either Democrat or Republican in my 37 years in the Senate. No matter how you feel, you want a president to succeed because the country succeeds. It's irresponsible to feel otherwise. We want everybody to succeed. And again, I go back to the same thing when they talk about the budget. He's one person. That particular Republican leader is one who voted for an unnecessary war in Iraq and then said, oh, by the way, why don't we just borrow the money and pay for it? Now, we're going to eventually end up, that's going to cost us over $1 trillion with medical costs and everything else, to say nothing of the terrible sacrifice of brave men and women who lost their lives there, their families who've been devastated. It is partisanship gone amok.
Bernie,
I would just, I certainly agree with that, but I want everybody to remember this. When Wall Street was bailed out for $700+ billion, did you hear anyone talk about offset? That's what they wanted to bail out Wall Street. There wasn't any offsets.
That's right.
When you give tax breaks to billionaires to help run up the deficit, I didn't hear much talk about offsets. And as Senator Leahy just indicated, when you talk about expanding and putting huge amounts of money into the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, building roads in Afghanistan, I didn't hear much about offsets. But suddenly, when you need a relatively small amount of money to rebuild communities in the state of Vermont and in other states, suddenly we hear a whole lot about offsets. I think that is politics of the worst kind. I think that is absolute hypocrisy.
what's your understanding, Bernie, about when
the FEMA money would stop rolling into Vermonters if this happened?
Well, we are very nervous. I don't know if anyone knows exactly the hour, but I think we're talking about a couple of days this week. Wednesday, I think people are suggesting. Now, here you have, right now, people in trailer parks whose homes have been devastated. They've been given some help. And it may well be that if we don't resolve this thing, people who have really been hurt, who need that help, may not get it. And I think that deadline may well be in a couple of days.
One of the problems,
Yes.
yeah, one of the problems with this too, I'm going to say not just money to self-employed, there is some flexibility in what FEMA might do. For example, and people are going to relocate and all, but they can't do it if they don't have any money. Now, three of us in the delegation of the governor can go and talk to them and ask about the flexibility. The response we get, we're on your side. We don't have the money. One of the things we spend hours and hours and hours, the appropriations committee, I mean, this is almost mind-numbing, going line by line by line through the budget to find the money, to put it in there, and to give the flexibility, because what you might need in New Jersey might be different than you might need in Vermont. What you might need in Vermont might be different than you need in the Carolinas. And we've done that. But you got to pass the bill. The president will sign, we pass that, he will sign it the second it hits his desk. But the other thing is, they don't realize you turn this off and you turn it back on, you waste tens of millions of dollars just doing that. I'd rather be spending that money helping people out.
And it's not only wasting money. It's one thing to make sure that people whose homes, for example, have been destroyed or damaged get the assistance they need. Winter is coming. But if you're talking about putting hundreds of millions of dollars to rebuild roads and bridges, you have to be planning for that. You know, you just don't, that doesn't happen tomorrow. So you have to plan on that. We know that the weather is going to get cold. And not to have that money available so our road people can make those plans is absolutely an outrage.
But your
Most of the asphalt companies closed down in November.
Your vote tonight is sort of preliminary, though, right? Like a test vote?
Well, no, we voted twice already, and this would be another vote. If it passes, I would hope that in the House, those the Tea Party and whatnot would say, okay, we got our vote, we made our point. It's a stupid point. Most Americans, Republicans or Democrats, disagree with it. Now let's go on and take care of Americans.
Congressman Welch decided that what he would do is vote for this bill even though it wasn't what he wanted because of the offsets. What's wrong with that?
The one thing, it is not going to complete the same. I understand him wanting to get the money through it, and Peter's work extraordinarily hard. Ultimately, we've got to get, we also cannot set the precedent of offsets. Do you think that these same people, and I look at the public leader Cantor talking about, oh, we're going to have offsets. When they had flooding and disasters and hurricanes in his district in Virginia, he was bragging about the money he was getting.
Let me just answer that, because this is a huge point, what everybody understands. What these people are proposing is a precedent which says that, God forbid, there's an earthquake in California next month, and it requires billions of dollars of reconstruction aid. We're going to have then, under their mentality, a debate about whether we cut education or health care or the environment in order to fund disaster relief for California. Can you imagine that as a precedent? That every time there's a disaster in America, we're going to have a great debate on whether we cut programs for children or the elderly or the sick. That is insane. That is insane.
But no debate for Iraq and Afghanistan. So thank you. I got to go get on a plane.
Is there any way, this may be a dumb question, is there any way to circumvent, this whole debate and get the money to FEMA from
We're trying every way we can.
We're trying everywhere. That's why we're going back. And that's, I've been, as Marcel knows, because she was driving. We were around this weekend. I was on the phone all weekend too, trying to line.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And I got a